yesterday and the spike that defined it at the very end of the day. A proper wall test, I think you might find. And we had a great winner, perhaps coming left field for some of you. But really, it did have a big impact at the end of the day as we ran into a spectacular finish. It'll be one today as well as we head to Kirk from Kirk to Labin. And indeed, an even more sterling effort at the end of today, and in fact, one dead centre of proceedings this time. So, how did we get here? Well, the flag flew, and indeed, we got ourselves a breakaway. 5 riders determined to open up their account as far as the King of the Mountains competition was concerned. And Marvin Hammerschmidt did precisely that from Team Rinko Advarix here in the green, the Flying Mullet, doing a fantastic job of assembling mountains points throughout the day. In fact, they were up there for much of it, to be honest. It was only when we came towards town that they were finally wound in on the nasty, testy peaks that were to define the day. So new King of the Mountain by the day's end. Had to wait for some finishing positions, but Marvin Hammerschmidt did the job. And then, of course, we came to these rather punishing inclines of around about 17% around town towards our finish. A very small looping lap, and indeed some very testy corners that at least got a preview of it on the descent. But the final bend was looming large, and take that well, and you were going to be in a very fine position. This was a hairpin, another couple of loops to be dealt with before we got to the last left-hander. And then, of course, it was the drive to home. Position absolutely vital. One man was there or thereabouts almost constantly. It was Barazini in the silver. Just watch him here, coming in to this final curve. Got a good tight line. And by the time he lifted it up, Bittner had already gone, but there were faster men behind, it seemed. Once again, Tobias Lund was in the frame. Didn't quite get there. And it was Parasini. Biggest win of his career. Absolutely joyful. And just look at the gap that he managed to post here. In third wheel, Tobias Lund coming after him. And at this point, we thought maybe Barasini would be caught, but he had enough strength to go all the way. And Lund, wearing the young riders classification jersey here, just checking his power meter and then asking those around him, who's this guy? Mohoric finishing in third place. There's a chat between them. But Parasini took the day and was more than delighted with this result as well. He might be. So Tobias Lund, Andresen, just missing out. Here is Parasini.
Yeah, I can't believe it's a big emotion for me, and I know that today I can do a good race, a good result, and I made it.
He did make it. Tobias Lund Andresen is our overall leader by a margin of just 2 seconds from Parasini. Aula running in third place just for now. Big Mountains test today. But Tobias Lund opening up the fizzy stuff. Oh, the tasty rosé for him to share with anyone who was up for it. Leaving not much left in the bottle, I must admit. Well, this is earlier today. They rolled out on what everyone acknowledges is basically the Queen stage of this year's race. As it has been in the past. In fact, it's provided a great deal of drama, our run to Lebin in the past. Luke Rowe giving us a thumbs up. Not quite sure what that means in terms of sponsorship or indeed team configuration for next year, but I hope he's part of it. Eli Viviani wearing the points jersey, as you have just seen. He's wearing that on behalf of Tobias Lund, who is the leader, and this is the day's course. And as you can see from the altimetry, it's pretty lumpy. The big all category tests that they are engaged with as we speak, we'll be heading over. In fact, they've actually dealt with it. I'm just getting some live pictures in, but this was earlier today. Once the flag had waved, took a little while. There was a bit of a stall before we actually got ourselves some of those who were prepared to hit out. And indeed, they did so. 3 riders in the break, ultimately, and hard to fathom who was going to be up there for quite some time. There was a few rolls of the dice. And in the end, Jola Kometa made it up front with Mirko Maestri. He, the best placed of our breakers at just 37 seconds down. Jonas Abramson of Uno X also up the road along with Michael Charan. Now, they didn't last there long, to be fair. And in fact, once we started heading towards our climbs, dealt with the Kirker Bridge, which took us to the island, then it was never going to be something that they could hold on to. 2 intermediate sprints along the way before we actually got to the foot of the all category climb, set to define the race. And indeed, I can tell you they have already dealt with it and dealt with the descent. Last man standing, Jonas Abramson, coming to the peak here, and with an all category points therein, getting himself 20 points in the King of the Mountains competition. Charan with 15, Maestri with 10, Rapp with 8. So, all done and dusted over the top, and then racing for the line today. And here we are. We are on the second climb of the day, having dealt with the all category. This is the Africi. Once we get over this, there are still some lumps and bumps, not least, of course, a circuit towards the end of the day, which will take a great deal of bravery to master. So we're very much looking forward to that. Shame that we've missed the big climb of the day, but at least we have the result. And the peloton more or less together, but the attacks will come a little bit later. Previously, when we've been over the Poklon, we've had a breakaway of around 17 to 20 riders that pushed on, thinned down just a little bit towards the end. And last year, you might remember that it was a big, brave effort towards the end of the day. And a lot of hopes were dashed, I'm afraid. Pierre Roland, his final season, looked like he might just snatch a victory. And then he was tagged out of that 17-man group. 18-year-old Oscar Onley went for it and nearly won. Jonas Fingergo timed his run perfectly, used Oscar Onley as a foil, and came through for victory. But Onley did a great job, and he's back here again, of course, this year for Team DSM. So they've got an interest in making sure that this does not get out of hand. Team Jaco Alula with Eddie Dunbar. He had such a terrible run of fortune in La Vuelta. I think Eddie Dunbar could do with cheering up, and this is the perfect race to do it for him. So let's see if Steady Eddie with Jaco Alula managed to get something out of the day. UnoX did manage to implant somebody in the break earlier on today. Didn't quite work out for them, as you saw, but Jonas Abramson will get the King of the Mountains jersey, and it's hard to take it off his shoulders with the remaining climbs, and indeed those who are not thinking about that jersey may automatically just neutralise the challenge to Abramson in the King of the Mountains jersey competition. So settle yourselves in. We've got 67 kilometres of the day remaining, which means that we are dealing with another climb. We'll be there in about a kilometre's time. This is the Africi. Once we're over the top of this one, there's kind of a plateau which takes us to our third climb. There are 5 today, but none of all category, which we've already dealt with. So this is going to turn into a battle of attrition because there are so many tests along the way. It is bound to get rather wearing. The Africi does have a little kick towards the end here, but honestly, it's not that difficult. We're talking about 4% only remaining. So the real difficulty comes in the lay-in at the finish, and indeed we'll be talking once again in very hushed terms about some spectacular percentages at the end of the day. Up there, sort of 10, 12, 14% that will take us to the finish line. It's got it's kind of set bricks, so it might rattle a bit when we're going up there. Let's wait and see. So bouncing along we certainly are, with just under a devil of a distance now, 6.65 remaining, 66.5 if you understand, and the reach is out, starting again. Whenever you catch a break, Pippa York, it breeds ambition for others who want to be part of the next one.
It certainly does. You can see here from the Ljubljana, right? Is it Ljubljana? No, it's not Ljubljana. It is Linkoff. So they're excited by the prospect of another King of the Mountains points on offer. I think that's going to change hands anyway. The Epperson taking those 20 points on the horse category climb. Whether he survives this climb in the peloton remains to be seen, because there's only 55, 60 riders, so half the peloton have disappeared just by that attritional speed that's been set by Jayco. It should be interesting as this develops towards the finish.
Very much so. And just looking at the way that they are assembled at the moment, they're kind of strung out. Luke Plapp, ever visible, along with the rest of Ineos Grenadiers, and yet more press speculation as to who and how teams will be sponsored, or indeed who's going to merge with them going forward. There's a lot of speculation. It is that silly season. We might go through a little bit of it a little bit later, but for the time being, we're kind of waiting for this race to blow apart. It sort of happened on the first all category test. They dealt with this climb. It's a short descent onto a plateau, but it does continue to roll until we get to the next climb. I've got a feeling that this day may well again be ahead of schedule, Pip.
Yeah, you get that feeling. There's a bit of intent there from Jayco Alula to take control of this. They're not going to leave it to DSM to kind of boss things like they did yesterday. Obviously, with Eddie Dunbar there, they've got some proper options for that kind of final climb to kick up to the finish, which they're going to see twice. They don't attack it from so far down for the finish. But yeah, we'll see. Notably on the back of the group there, Oscar Onley was kind of saving himself for what's to come later. So that might be the kind of better option later on.
Rather beautiful monastery, the island of Košiūn. It occupies a central position in the Puntarska Draga and has been declared a nature park. And on the island there's a Franciscan monastery and 3 museums. I imagine they're probably bored of visiting them themselves, so I assume you can actually take a boat over to it and go and have a look. But yes, ethnographic, religious and zoological collections. Zoological? I mean, were the rhinos on there back in the day? I'm not quite sure, but anyway. It's probably the odd worm, snail or two. But yes, apparently a very rich library. So look forward to that. That drone nearly got upset by the helicopter there. Yes, they've got 30,000 books, and surely the monks who are in there can't have read them all, but they're giving it a good go. The Church of the Blessed Virgin Mary's Annunciation and the Church of St. Bernard are both there, so you can go over and take your pick. Time to take on some sustenance, quite clearly, and Josh Tarling is doing just that. He'll be time trialling all the goodies back to his teammates in a few moments' time. Nice smooth sticky bottle there, just to keep himself where he needs to be. No foul, no favour. Although they have been handing out fines, have the UCI. I mean, somebody's got to pay for the Christmas party, I guess, but they've been coming thick and fast, haven't they? Yeah,
so we've had 2 fines for littering. One of our members of the break, Caro Carmondra, received 250 Swiss francs, which is probably more than they've earned already in this race. I imagine that in the team meeting he was sent out to try and
earn the money back.
Justify something there. So there was Carmondra and Garcia Penra, who we've seen up there in the sprints. They both received the 250 Swiss francs. And the other thing from the communique was that Alexander Kristoff had a mechanical in the last 3 kilometres yesterday, and he received the same time as the group that he was in at that moment.
A bit like an old trackies crash, isn't it? You come out of the gate, you're not that comfortable, so you lay the bike down. They don't have to do that anymore. But yeah, the hand went up, mechanical, and well, it must have been verifiable, unless the mechanic came up with a Stanley knife. I'm not quite sure, but I'm saying nothing. So I like Alexander Kristoff. He can do what he likes. And the good news is that he didn't lose too much time yesterday. But I don't think he's going for the overall. But he'll be happy with the sprints that finish off this race. Today, a very different complexion, isn't it?
It's going to be a very different set of riders who are battling towards the line. As you can see, there's only kind of this. There's not really that many big riders left. So for Josh Tarling to make this group already after the Hor category climb, he's doing really well, and it shows he's in good condition. But I can't imagine it's going to be a sprint fest today.
Here you go, Mr. Rapp, Jonas Rapp, nicking the points here. and just making sure that Abramson didn't get too many. He did get some, however. And as a result, he, having taken the all-category test, now is our leader. Jakub Primožić was, I believe, was he the man who was in the break? Yes, no, beg your pardon, Hammerschmidt, wasn't it, of course, that is wearing the Mountains jersey. That is a green jersey in this race, because the Mountains are green. There you go, at least the top of them, where it rains. Who's going to kick up a storm? Well, we've seen some spectacular sights today, but for the moment, one of those is unlikely to be the immediate action, but it will come thick and fast, I think. A bit like ground rush once we get over our next climb and then spin along back down towards the coast and indeed the peak that awaits us. Big mountain at the end of the day in terms of its importance, because it may not be huge in terms of its distance, but the climb up to the Levi, the finish line, is pretty sterling. And at the very last, ramps of 10, 12, possibly 14% in the turns, it's no easy matter. And we saw there was a great, can we say, grading of riders yesterday on the wall that really was too much for many. 61.1 kilometres from home. It was thinned down to rather a lot yesterday, Pippa, at the very last. I think it's going to be the same deal today.
I'm not that surprised it was thinned down with that finish. You know, it described as technical. If you've got life insurance, you would describe it as dangerous.
Yep.
So, you know, the number of candidates to throw themselves at that last corner and hope they're going to stay up are quite limited in those circumstances. And we saw that from the way that Bittner went round the last corner. You know, I think he took a length out of Matej Mohoric. So his bike handling skills were very good, and you know, it's just a shame that he couldn't go all the way to the line with it. But maybe it wasn't the best choice to come out there first and have the kind of focal point for everybody behind to kind of catch the slipstream and force their way past.
Yeah, and the winner yesterday, Parasini, did a phenomenal job of it. For a young man, really drew the eye in those kind of circumstances. It's funny, isn't it? You can almost get a result by default, but he really had to work at that, and he finessed it beautifully at the end.
He certainly did, and coming around the last corner in third position, it was probably just about the ideal, the way that kind of Bittner laid out, and Mohoric had to close the gap, that slight gap that developed on that left-hander. So he was kind of lucky that Tobias Lund was slightly more scared than the rest of them, and he laid off in the corner and obviously felt strong enough to close the gap. But it certainly was one of those finishes which either could have ended up in the catch fencing, or you stayed up and took the victory.
I was glad we got through it, actually. We did miss out on the intermediate sprint yesterday. I'll talk about that in a moment. Well, roadworks here, and they've got the flappy things. Some have been knocked over, as you can see. We were troubled by them yesterday, and in fact there was an RTA, a road traffic accident, just about where the intermediate sprint was. So we were busy talking about it, and they put down some lane markers to guide the riders around it. So the sprint was, I'm afraid, extinguished. We did not run the that intermediate sprint, and that's a shame, because there was a lot of riders who were up for it, saying, "Where is it?" weren't there?
Yep, everybody was thinking, right, we're coming to the sprint, now there's bonuses available, and suddenly they're in amongst all those roadworks, and it was more an obstacle course than a sprint. Quite good that there was no incidents in that section, because it looked quite hairy as a kind of passage of roadworks and various holes and little things sticking up in the middle of the road on each side. It probably looked more scary on the screen than it was to ride through, but it wasn't a great choice of road.
It wasn't, and thankfully everyone picked their way through it. They're being guided at the moment. There is these defined centre markers in the road. I always think that's for whoever's going to come through and do the white lines, but for the time being they're a little bit dangerous. But anyway, let's not dwell on it. Today I think it's very much going to be about the GC. You might have got some fast men who've made a bit of a noise. And I'm still thinking about my mate, Olus Aular, from Apparently, I've been calling him Aluar. Apologies for that. I do know it's Aular. It's just at speed, it pops out the wrong way. But anyway, let's hope he pops up the right way. In fact, he had a good finish yesterday, got a top 5. He was 5th behind Bittner, Mohoric, Andresen and Barsini. But he can climb and he's got a kick. Trouble is today, it ends with a climb. And I think that's where you're going to see the big noises coming to the fore. For Ineos Grenadiers, Ethan Hayter, yes, but more likely Magnus Sheffield, especially the way he seems to be being looked after at the moment. And he's wearing the white Young Riders jersey, by the way, on behalf of Tobias Lund. I don't think it's Tobias Lund's day today. I think it's Oscar Onley, or indeed possibly even Matt Dinham. In fact, say it quietly, Matt Dinham might well have the nod. Despite the fact that Oscar Onley came so close last year, he's going to have a lot of belief, but it was from a breakaway. So let's see. They might stay more compact today. There's various scenarios as to how this could pan out.
Yes, I think we're definitely going to see somebody more on the climbing spectrum than we are on the kind of sprint, given what's happened so far today. Everybody is going to be worn out by the time we get to the circuit, and it's going to come down to who's in good form, who's got climbing legs, and who has a little bit of sparkle left to accelerate on that last climb.
That was St Matthew's Church, dedicated, guess who, to St Matthew. It was built in 1862, and there's a painting inside of, guess who, St Matthew, the patron saint of the parish and of course of arts and crafts, adoring the main altar of the church, created by a local artist named Ivan Bastian in 1863. And it was opened on the feast day of, guess who?
St Matthew?
Correct. And it's celebrated on September the 21st every year. So there you go. There's a lot of St Matthews there. If you think about what to name your firstborn, then I think we've probably put some suggestions in your head. 56 kilometres from home. And Jayco and Uno Expo Cycling, I'm being stared at here, are going for it. Is it between them? Who's your pick for today? Are you going to go Mohoric, just for the hell of it?
No. I'd like to see Oscar Onley win this, just because he's kind of on that comeback trail.
I'd love it.
But I think it's more likely to be Magnus Sheffield. He's been ridiculously strong so far, and it's the kind of finish that he's okay on. So it depends if Ineos make it really difficult from the bottom of that last climb. So I think it's going to be difficult for the kind of really fast guys to. So Hayter was still there for a while. Slightly too difficult for him, and he's been in the wind a little bit too much. So yeah, I'd like to see a kind of climber type win.
Isn't it funny, once you know the peloton, you know what they've been through, and you know the trials and tribulations they're in. Looking at Freddie de Verne at the moment, I think it's Jonas Greyard for them. And in fact, he was just talking to Torsten Tain. Could be him. We've got lots of options of UnoX. Yeah, when you know the peloton, you know what they've all been through, and the roads back as well, and the ill fortune that they've suffered, such as Eddie Dunbar. Talks about Magnus Sheffield on his road return as well, and the disappointment, of course, of others such as Matej Mohoric himself. We all want Oscar Onley as well to take that extra step forward after last year. It becomes there's a little bit whiff of the soap opera about it, isn't there?
It's got the feeling of kind of tour of redemption almost.
It has. Maybe that's a character of the fact that it's so late in the season as well. It's great. That was the Passions Castle and the Abyss. Now, I could tell you all kinds of stories about the Abyss, but honestly, it's before the watershed, and quite frankly, it's a bit gory. But anyway, the heart of Istria, proudly elevated on the edge of the steep cliffs, lies Pashin. And the cliffs are part of a deep abyss and a natural attraction created by the strange game of nature, it says. Yes. A place for adventures. Yeah, it says one can fly over the... there's a zip wire, so you could, I guess, relive some of the disasters that befell others. but in a safe way, thankfully. We're not going to go there. But anyway, you get the idea. It's a big abyss, and it was used for all kinds of naughtiness in the past. But anyway, now it's a fun thing with the zip wire.
Now, looking at this, it's kind of strange that X are contributing to Jayco's work on the front. So, for a long while there, we just had Chris Jensen, setting the pace. Can't really figure out why, because they're not at the race lead. They don't have to take any kind of responsibility for this other than just the stage win. And now X have put Abrahamsen there as well. So you have to kind of question why they're doing this.
They're doing it for Gregar, I think. He's their man. Whether he's got what it takes to deliver today is anybody's guess.
So here we have Luke Plapp hit the front. So I think they're not too far from the next intermediate sprint and bonus seconds.
Comes at the foot of the climb. So as it's very tight at the top, every second counts, and it'll be interesting to see who wants to get up for this one.
Yeah, so we've got Luke Plapp, Josh Tarling. It doesn't look like it's Magnus Sheffield in third position. So kind of strange choice to be leading out so far from here.
Well, I'm wondering whether it's there's a little bit of insurance being built into it all here as well, because we climb straight away almost immediately, and it may well stop a bounce.
Yes, it's Hayter in third position, who would imagine they want to take the bonus seconds, but since he's not in the GC, it's obviously for the points competition.
Well, Hayter's only 11 seconds down, so it has some use, and they throw at the line, and guess who? It's Anderson who comes up. And, beg your pardon, it is the man who's nursing the young rider's jersey on behalf of our leader that comes through and indeed takes it. Good work. That was Magnus Sheffield.
No, it's a Q36.5 rider.
I thought it was Magnus Sheffield in the white jersey, but let's wait and see in a few moments' time.
Q36.5.
I think you're absolutely right. If that's Parasini again, that will be something. Spurred on by yesterday. Well, let's wait and see.
Could well be him then. He'll be fighting for the points competition.
Well, that would be great. Great work by him. It kind of looks like him from yesterday. Apologies for misdirecting you.
It's certainly somebody who could sprint to come over the top of Ethan Hayter, who's not exactly a very slow... hasn't got a slow sprint, so whoever it was, we'll find out in a minute when the results come up.
I think you're right. I think it's Parasini after yesterday. Let's have a look at this. Overhead would be a little easier for us. Let's see. And here we go. Well, they're all looking to master it. Oh, and here he comes just out of absolutely nowhere. Spurred on from yesterday and throwing at the line. Hayter threw it, but yeah, I think you're right, Parasini. Why would he wouldn't be battling against his own teammates, Magnus Sheffield? So yeah, Nico Parasini, I believe, has added something special there. Got himself some bonus seconds yesterday, but he's not thinking about the overall because the climb will possibly defeat him. I know he went over it yesterday extraordinarily well. He also, I've got to tell you, sits just 2 seconds behind Tobias Andersson overall. So if he did take the 3 bonus seconds there, he leads by a second this race. How handy was that?
Bit of a turn up for the books. Another race leader potentially, if he survives the finish.
Indeed. Well, we said yesterday he got himself into the spotlight, and he's done that most certainly right now, if indeed it turns out to be him. And I believe you're absolutely right, Pippa, it's him. Gosh, that's very good timing. Now he's got to survive the climbs,
which is another story entirely. Given what's on the menu and given the amount of kind of efforts he's made through the stage, it's going to be a difficult thing for him. You never know.
Tobias Lund Andersson, 5 minutes and 10 seconds behind the main bunch. So the red jersey entirely absent. And so that's a very good move by Parasini. If Tobias Lund is indeed out of the equation, Alexander Kristov Well, Parasini had the beating of Christoph yesterday. I know he had a mechanical. I'm just looking at who's a danger to stop Parasini. Magnus Sheffield is only 10 seconds adrift. Ethan Hayter picked up 2 bonus seconds, so he now finds himself 9 seconds down on Parasini. Gosh. Well, fine work. Still waiting for the result. Not declared as yet, so we shall wait to see which of the Q365 riders it was. They've got Simon Sanyok and, of course, Travis Steadman as well, the South African. But it wasn't Steadman's jersey out there. I'm hoping it was Parasini. I believe it was. So, we may have a new leader, despite the fact we just declared the overall race leader in arrears at the moment. Well, he is just for now. Long day. It's going to feel like a long day. 191 kilometres. It's actually the longest of the race.
It is, and we were wondering why DSM weren't making any kind of contributions to the pace setting, and we found out the reason why, that they no longer have the race lead. He's 5 minutes behind, so
yeah,
it's a reset for everybody here.
It certainly is. .6 kilometres from home, and they're just adjusting their thoughts for the day, I guess. Well, the white jersey just showing itself towards the back. That was indeed Magnus Sheffield, who now virtually owns that jersey. So time to kick on, and no surprise, I guess, that UNOX have decided that Abramson is going to be the sacrificial lamb. He's the lead out for their sprinters, Ben Dixon and Alexander Christoph, but won't be required to be on duty today.
So his main objective now is just to go over the top of this climb and take even more points, because he's definitely in the lead of the King of the Mountains now. So I imagine everybody else is kind of accepted that fact that he's up for taking that jersey, and they'll just let him kind of roll over the over the top. Although the Frontex Adriatics riders might get involved.
Well, Parasini, there he is, just bouncing in that silver jersey, open at the neck. So indeed it was he that crossed the line of that intermediate sprint, virtual race leader, and now finds himself just giving a little bit of slip room to help himself by his position, and he's bouncing with some very good climbers here. Well, I'm wondering whether if we unveiled Parasini yesterday, whether we're going to be putting a spotlight upon him by the end of the day. Very wise to what was available. No more intermediate sprints. The remaining bonus seconds come at the very end. There's Magnus Sheffield, who the American, wearing the white Young Riders jersey. Sorry for confusing him with Parasini a few moments ago. Well, I did. Pippa didn't. And here we are. Parasini looks good for this. Not the most sterling climb, but hey, he's here, and many other fast men are not.
No, they're not. I was just looking there to see who was missing from Ineos, and it's Luke Rowe and Elia Viviani, which is no surprise. So Luke Rowe's done quite a lot of work, and Elia isn't really known for his climbing abilities, so Ineos got 5 riders out of 7, which isn't too bad. They've got a whole lot of options, tactically as they go towards the finish.
Eddie Dunbar, just making sure he's staying in touch. His teammates are doing the driving for him. He's just embedded a little bit further back. But yeah, Oscar Onley today for DSM. That would be a nice sort of coming full circle if he does manage to get here. It's a shame we don't have yesterday's finish to play in for you, I understand. But last year, 2022, Onley came very, very close to doing the job. Doing one right now, still hoovering up points, or Rinko Advarix trying to make sure that Abramson from UNOX doesn't get too many points, but it looks like he's got up to take a couple again, which is good news for him. He was in the break at the beginning of the day and still stays in that King of the Mountains jersey.
He's having a bit of an epic day, so he's scooped up some more points. So I think, calculating that, he's got roughly double the points of this next challenger, so he's certainly got probably 26 points now, and after that everybody else has got 12.
It's kind of the day to do that, isn't it, with not many major climbs remaining in this race, and he could possibly marshal himself to be in charge of some of those. I don't think there's any categorised climbs on Sunday. We've got some tomorrow early on, but honestly, I think he may well have done enough just to have secured that jersey. So great news for him and for Uno X if it's not going to work out for Alexander Kristoff. Might do on the final day, but not for the overall title, I wouldn't have thought.
And you imagine as a kind of lead-out rider for what his normal duties are, that he won't have many climbers' jerseys in his collection. So, it'd be quite a nice thing for him.
Yeah, I think so. Meanwhile, a bit of chit-chat going on back here. And it's Connor Swift with Ethan Hayter and, of course, the Australian champion Luke Platt. I don't know whether this is battle plan or just what they're going to have for dinner, to be honest. Well, obviously, dinner's coming early. The hand's gone up. And like a plate of sandwiches, thank you very much. It's thinned down. This is quite a select group we're looking at right now.
Yeah, there's not many riders left in this. That's kind of normal for the end of the year. Riders, quite a lot of riders have kind of given up mentally. Well, not given up mentally, but they'll be tired and saving themselves for the fast guys have definitely been saving themselves to the circuit round in Zagreb when it's going to be another sprint. So today it's just a matter of making it inside the time cut and then a reset for Sunday.
Let's see if he'll make it. Magnus Sheffield, a reminder, if he does come good today, and why wouldn't he, is wearing the white jersey. Eli Viviani, haven't seen a hair of him. And here's your results of the KOM. They still haven't declared the sprint officially. But this is Rapp ahead of Abramson, who gets more points on this modest climb that they've just been over. Seeing what categorisation it was, I think it might have even been a 2. It was a 3, I think.
It was a 3, so 4, 2 and 1.
Yep.
So potentially, I think he has about 26 and 28 points. So, he's easily in the lead now.
Now, despite the fact that we crossed the finish line twice, second time, of course, is the finish, we have a longer approach to the first half of the mountain, which we don't actually take twice. So we will start climbing up a mound. We then go over the top and we come around the mound about halfway. We've seen that before. And then we kick up to the line after that. So the 2 remaining climbs are category 2, despite the fact it's the same ending of each of those climbs, if you see what I mean. So we climb all the way up the mountain to the top, and then we skirt around the hip of the mountain before coming back up and doing it again. There you go. I reckon we've got, 50 riders here?
Yeah, 55.
Yeah.
It doesn't look, maybe 60 at the most, because there's somebody small hiding in the middle there. There's not a lot of people left so far.
I'm going for Aular. Just seeing him. He's,
so if you choose him every day, eventually it's going to work out.
It's a better hat. That's all I'm saying. But yes.
It's like being at the Tour de France where everybody, it's a day for Tony Galopin. Used to be the kind of in-joke for that.
That's right. Bless him. And he did actually come good very late on in his career as well. Mind you, we've kind of been doing the same thing for Thomas de Gent, haven't we? And he does keep coming good. But there you go.
But then he is Thomas de Gent. So
that is true, yes. A man who is always, it seems, on a breakaway. Even when he's on his holidays, he just goes camping. He can't sit still, that man. Jayco's still doing the large majority of the work. I've seen them do this in the past and then burn themselves out. I hope this is not the case today, because I'd like to see Eddie Dunbar go well.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that happens. You play your cards slightly too early, and everybody kind of sits back and watches you. Notably, Bahrain did it the first day. They spent all day pulling on the front, and then Matty Mohoric got captured in that crash just inside 7 kilometres to go. So hopefully that won't happen to Jayco today.
I hope not. Uno X I'd like to see go well as well. In fact, there's so many teams here that have a place in my heart. I'm starting to think about Nico Parasini. I want him to thrive, but the likelihood of that happening, pretty slim. We don't know too much about him. I mean, sure, I can go and look at his, we went through his Palmares yesterday, but honestly, the way he actually took control of yesterday, and in fact was making sure, showing great wisdom, that he did a good job today as well. He does climb, he does sprint, we know about that, and the only thing he can't really do is time trialling, so who knows?
And luckily there's no time trials here, so so far this race is looking up for him.
Here's Oscar Onley, who's your choice for the day. What scenario is going to pan out for him?
Oh, they rise. Well, normally as a climber, you're hoping that everybody throws themselves at the bottom of the climb, and then they kind of blow up halfway, and then you take it over. When it gets a little bit cagey, unless you've got a really good bit of kind of jump on you and you're quite explosive, then that's the best scenario. I think Oscar would probably prefer that it's that really hard tempo from the bottom, and then riders fall off one by one as they go into the red, and you're left there. You're still not at your maximum until probably about 1 kilometre to go, and then you can kind of sustain that level for about 2 minutes. So that would be the ideal scenario. Whether the other riders let that happen, it's the second time up on the finishing circuit, it's a 1 kilometre ascent. You would imagine that not many people are going to want to attack that right from the bottom. So it's all about the first time up the hill, how hard it is, how many people you can eliminate that could possibly put in a big acceleration in about 500 metres to go. Maybe DSM will take that over, but it also kind of suits Magnus Sheffield as well. So he's got a little bit of a lead over Onley, and on that kind of finish, you have to wonder if Oscar Onley's got enough explosiveness with the form that he's currently got, coming back from injury, to make enough of a gap.
Well, he had it last year. If you can do it again, that would be great. Magnus Sheffield, in the Vejle stage in Denmark, he showed that he'd got quite a bit of punch, and he's going to need that today. The question is he deep down explosive enough to deliver today? I'm not sure he is, but he can really grind it out as well and build up more and more and more pace. Magnus Sheffield, the American.
It's not one of those things that Ineos tend to do.
No.
They kind of wait, and then there's a big acceleration. They tend to wear you out beforehand, so they set that really high tempo. Everybody goes into the red, they're at their maximum, and then whoever's their designated rider attacks over the top of that when the kind of lead-out rider swings over. It's a different scenario, that kind of a ride from when it's going to be a kind of uphill sprint and it's a case of explosiveness. So they might set a really hard tempo, and then it's down to who's the strongest.
They have historically had a habit of riding to numbers, so know exactly what you mean. So let's see how Magnus Sheffield goes today. The question is where his form is after a long break as well. That's also something you need to dwell on. Well, if indeed Magnus Sheffield is the first card that they want to play, then of course Ethan Hayter will also be an ace in the pack for them, potentially. He's already shown that he's quite sprightly, and he was up for that intermediate sprint, so he's thinking about the overall, otherwise he wouldn't have been going for those bonus seconds.
No, so I imagine they were doing that to kind of keep Elia Viviani in the points competition as well, so maybe more a case of keeping those points out of Parasini's way than they are of keeping Ethan Hayter up there on GC.
Well, we're still waiting for confirmation of the intermediate sprint, but we believe it is Parasini. Just going through Bahrain victorious that have, of course, Matej Mohoric. He damaged his chances. Here he is on your screen at the moment. Damaged his chances on day one, you remember. After a very unfortunate incident. Little bit of touch of wheels, and he was caught behind it, and it was actually quite up towards the front. So Mohoric, as defending champion, really, really, really wanted to go well. And on the opening day, shipped, 48 seconds, I think it was. And ever since then, he's been playing catch-up. And today really is the day you can find a lot of time. But the way he is riding within this group, I think there are others that seem equally strong. He might get the win today, but not by the margin he needs.
No, he's not going to take up 50 seconds from everybody else. And on social media this morning, Bahrain were saying that Matej Mohoric was their option for today. So I think that they're kind of settled on this. So they're not going to win this race again. They're just going to try and get what they can out of it by taking stage wins, and because they've lost time on the opening stage, that's probably their only option now.
That's the point, isn't it? When you have a short stage race like this, 6 days, you run out of luck sometimes early.
And it comes down to seconds.
Yeah.
And it could have played, I think last year he won because he took bonus seconds. So
That's
when
right.
it's that close, it's very difficult if you lose time any stage to make it back up, because the level is so high nowadays that those bonus seconds may well decide where you end up on GC, which is why we're seeing certain riders that wouldn't normally get involved in those kind of intermediate sprints up there trying to take a second here and there.
Now, I thought we're in hum. I'll let you do that.
It's better than my singing.
It also means stinky, doesn't it? But I don't think that's the case here. Yes, it's we've been past the abyss. I haven't actually seen much about hum. I think they invented a singing form without words. It's my guess. Welcome back, everybody. You've saved us from ourselves. We have UNOX, who look like they've settled themselves in for a good old day today. So who is it going to be for them? I think it's got to be Jonas Greyard, although Torsten Train was busy strategizing back at the car. So I don't know whether he's just carrying a message or whether that was the car saying, "It's you, my friend." Either one of them, I think they are the chosen sons for UNOX, now that Jonas Abramson has done a job in the King of the Mountains competition. And here we are. And here's Alexander Kristoff with his Viking visage. Yesterday, unfortunately, he got himself a technical very late on. Didn't lose any time because it was within the last 3 kilometres, but a bit unfortunate, I think it's fair to say. Or maybe fortunate, I don't know. It depends on how you think he might have done on that descent. I mean, he's a big man to get around those corners that we had yesterday, but anyway, he's still in the frame.
And the thing about yesterday was since it was so technical, let's call it that, you have to wonder at Alexander Kristoff's stage in his career, is he willing to, risk crashing that last corner at this, in his kind of final seasons? So I would guess not. It's a kind of young man's thing. You gotta throw yourself towards that catch fence, and if I stay up, it's okay, and if I don't, well, it's an experience I might not enjoy. But Alexander Kristoff is wily enough to know when to apply himself to the race win, and when leave it to the kind of kamikaze people.
Definitely. We're going to pass by soon the Valamar Bellevue 4-star resort, and I can tell you from personal experience, it is really a spectacular vantage point that this hotel holds. I stayed there a couple of years ago with old Grumpy Pants himself, Brian Smith, but we had a very nice time despite his grumpy nature. He celebrates it, by the way, on Grumpy Day, which is his birthday. Anyways, people said nothing. Here we are. We both are very fond of Brian, so before you start thinking we're dissing him.
Otherwise known as the King of Paisley.
That's right. Yes, I remember saying, he said, "So Paisley famous for its pattern." I said, yeah, but didn't it come from the Middle East at some point? No. I said, I think you might find it did. It's Persian. And when he found out that was true, he got very upset. It's like one of the things that his hometown is famous for. It turns out it was an imported thing. But anyway, still love a Paisley pattern, I must admit. Got a few ties. One of those. I haven't worn a tie for a long time. Meanwhile, they're not exactly knotted up, are they? It's flowing, I think it's fair to say. Have we collected any more riders within this group? Have they got back on? I don't think so.
I haven't seen anybody make it back. With this pace that Jo Jensen said, and you had to survive those last couple of climbs, otherwise you're never coming back. And if you come over the top a couple of minutes down, are you really going to risk it at this stage? If you got blasted on that hill, you're going to get blasted at the finish. So it doesn't really make any difference. I imagine there'll be a bit of a gruppetto with Luke Rowe in charge, calculated the time limit, and everybody will be kind of, right, let's get to the finish with the least hurt possible.
He's brilliant at that. Still a weekend to come, and we're on earlier these next few days, Pippa.
We are. I'll give you time to go to church.
Yes,
If
exactly.
you catch the evening. Is it
Yeah,
evening show?
you'll be able to go to a mass in the morning and then evensong in the evening. There you go. Why not? Or you could go supping on the Thames. Or indeed, supping in the other form of the word down at your local hostelry. But anyway, you can have a pint of milk. Here's Aula, my pick for the day. How's he going to go? Look at that cherubic face. How could you deny him anything?
Great jersey as well. So
That's fantastic, isn't it?
a bit like the Colombian jersey, so South Americans are rocking a good pattern there.
They are. The Venezuelan stars there, of which he can count himself as one. Fancy a gel? Gel? Do you want a gel? It's a coconut gel. Oh, I was hoping for a caramel one. Never mind, I'll just put it back in.
That was proper race leadership, where he gives his empties to the domestique of the day to carry, even though it's maybe 50 grams to carry that he's not going to have to take uphill.
Exactly. I don't know if this, do you fancy it? 37 kilometres to go. Now, we're just about to come to a downhill section which will speed us onto the flat and indeed our approach. So by the time we have dealt with this downhill run, we're going to be slamming into our final climb. So we've got about 10 kilometres of descending. They're starting it right now, as you can see. No handy. That is no handy Igor Arrieta. Don't think he's got a chance today, but hey, you just never know. So we come down and we start climbing with about 16 kilometres to go. So, yeah, we've got a nice downhill run for you right now. There'll be a couple of kickers along the way, and then, of course, we start our penultimate climb. So, how's the scenario going to pan out? I've got a feeling it's going to be a sprint up this first time of asking, and it'll get very selective because there's not much gap between the two peaks. We've got about, what is it? If it's 4 kilometres the climb, then
9 kilometres from the top of the first passage to the bottom of the second time. So that, that's about.
Yes, you're right. It's the Flamme Rouge, isn't it, the foot of it, because we don't take quite as much. So we do a big climb version, and then we just do the last K by the time we get around for the second time of asking.
And the really hurtful thing there is going to be, so it's a second cat, I think, or third cat.
Second cat's first time by, because you do more of the climb, and
so
then
do more of the climb, and then there's not really a downhill, so they kind of stay up at altitude, even though it's not that high. So if you're lost on the climb, you won't come back, not necessarily unless you come over maybe 10 seconds down and there's a slight lull. I imagine that Ineos need to set a really hard tempo. Somebody needs to take it on from 10k out and sort out the kind of wheat from the chaff.
Exactly. Grade those grains, why don't you? Makes finer flour. Oh, gosh, that's going back a bit. So yeah, I think there's going to be a real increase in the pace once we've dealt with our descent, which, as I said, occurs in a series of steps. Then I think we're going to be really going hell for leather to get to the foot of the climb. It's a flat section. In fact, it's the flattest section on the approach to the climb that we've had all day. I think we might have a causeway to go over as well, which I'm looking forward to. And very much the Girondella Velmar Collection Resort with its water slides that Brian refused to go on last year, which, such a grump. Got other things to do with my time, he said. Anyway, so like play Snake or something. 34.5 kilometres from home. Yolo Kipo Kern Farmer and Yolo Kometa riding side by side. They see a lot of each other within the season. There's a lot of familiarity, actually, and a brotherhood, really, amongst those. There was a lot of congratulations for Nico Parasini from Q365, from particularly the minor teams, who absolutely loved what he'd just done, which was announce himself. And he may well end up today as leader of this race after taking bonus seconds in the virtual lead a few moments ago. So that is pretty handy.
I imagine that the World Tour teams are going to have a bit of a say in what happens is in that final circuit. They can't really allow a tempo to be set that lets the fast people survive the climb. I'm just noticing there that UNOX have, I think, almost their whole team in this front group, so at least 6 riders. So numerically, they're the strongest at the moment, and compared to DSM, they've only got 3 riders left, so they were in the race lead, and now they're kind of on the back foot of watching what happens here and letting somebody else take it over.
Well, at the moment, it's the calm before the storm. Somebody's going to go on a flyer. Don't know who that's going to be. Could be a sacrificial lamb, but just looking, 33 k's to go. We're more or less heading for, let me see, 16 k's out. So if that's 60, I'm sorry, I'm busy doing some maths here. We're not that. We're on a flattish section which will tip over the top, and then we'll be descending again. This place. Now then, I believe I have got some notes on this for you. This is the Vajgrad. It's an impressive remains of a town that spread over 2 hilltops, and at one point it had a population of 2,000. This is in medieval times, 2,000 inhabitants. And then unfortunately the plague came along, as it did in Eyam, where I'm from, and and after the plague and then a war which saw off those who'd survived the plague. That's a bit unfortunate. There were only 3 families that lived there from the 17th century. And presumably, with all the missing roofs and the rest of it, they had a bit of a tough time. But in 1714, the parish moved, presumably, down the mountain, and the town finally had nobody living in it. It's a bit tragic, to be honest. Anyway, one of the largest complex of medieval remains in Istria, and it consists of double fortifications, 3 gates, old streets, 14th century tower, and the remains of over 200 buildings. Oh no, you almost feel like sticking a roof on it and moving in. The Church of St. Sophia, which was located on the hilltop, still apparently operates. So there you go. So you can walk up, have a look at what you might have had were it not for the plague and war. 31.7 kilometres it is then. And here we go. We're just tipping over the lip of this. Another descent, and this is a longer version of it right now that will take us down to the flatlands. So I think there's a lot of riders here will be quite happy sometimes to enter an accord, and I think that's what we've got right now, that this is all going to be decided on the final climbs. Nobody's going for it this long, but they will as soon as you start climbing.
No, we haven't got a Remco Evenepoel who's going to attack 30 kilometres out and hold off the peloton.
Sometimes it serves everyone just to see who's best in the ring at the end of the day, so a late punch-up.
Well, so far, every stage has kind of been traditional in the way that the tactics have evolved. There's been no upsets to it or attacks through the feed zones, or like we see sometimes you do that kind of double attack from the same team, which is always a kind of good tactical option to go away with somebody who you know is going to ride. So that hasn't happened, and everybody's kind of settled down into make it hard on the hard bits, eliminate who needs to be lost, and then it comes down to that kind of final kick to see who's going to win the stage. If you look at the fastest speed allowed that they organised today, it's over 40 kilometres. We're over and above it again, so we're about 5 minutes up on the fastest schedules. So it shows you that there's been quite a lot of stress in this race.
Very much so. And I think we're going to have quite a bit more, to be honest. There's tactic talk going on here with UNOX. I don't think they're arguing over who's going to have the remote control at dinner. They are determined today, and they've got several cards to play. Torsten Train, Jonas Greyart and Freddie de Verne, to my mind. They're the boys of the blood and custard here, up towards the front. So, it's kind of been as you were. We've had a few as you were days, and then it goes, all hell breaks loose. Same's going to be today.
Yeah, so actually, UNOX have got everybody here, so all 7 riders, and they're the only squad that have managed to do that. So you imagine that they're quite happy with this situation, and the options that they've got for the final climb are the ones that they wanted to have at that stage.
Bike coming up tight on the inside, which seems to be the wrong side. But hey, you've got to get these security guys through because they make the race safe. They're the ones that make sure that junctions are guarded. These are some of those who've come through earlier. You'll see they've all got a motorcycle and a helmet. I do notice they're not wearing... oh, here come the more protected riders just heading through. Motorcycle pilots, we call them, so there's no confusion. They've managed to get themselves through. They'll do a job further up. Not happy with the pace, X. They want to make this difficult. That's kind of to order, isn't it?
Yeah, so you have got riders to come up and help Abrahamson. Not have, so we saw this yesterday. So that the person who's on the front doing all the work, they get served. They get served because they're pulling everybody along. So so for Jaco, that's Jules Jensen. So he'll get his bidon supplied for the amount of work that he's doing. And for Abrahamson, it's the same thing. Now he's the king of the mountains in this race, despite being a lead-out rider. He's for the amount of work he's doing, he's the kind of protected person for this moment, and then later on when he kind of swings over with a true natural tiredness, his job's done, and he'll be thanked for that.
Here's Alexander Kristoff. Didn't lose any time yesterday. I think was possibly fortunate to have his technical within the last 3 kilometres. We're seeing what ambitions he's got as we get to tomorrow, our run to Asphalt, and of course Zagreb as well. No peak in Zagreb this year, unfortunately. It's a real shame as far as I'm concerned. They used to climb up to the old town. It was wonderful, through the old square and then race back down. Occasionally we'd finish in the square. We named it Yates Square, to be honest. But yeah, they've taken it away this year. I'm not quite sure why. The road surface was a bit worn down last year, and it might well be that is the reason why, and I hope we return to it because it was a classic finish. This is Barban that we're just going through. Bound to be something on the old castle keep here. Not Peveril Castle, but pretty similar. I don't think William Peveril came down here, to be honest with you. Just passing by and heading towards Leben Old Town, and indeed the highways therein. Speed cams, warnings, as you can see, very good rolling surface, in fact impeccable road we're dealing with at the moment. A real nice one. I haven't seen any heavy roads here at all.
No, it's been a lovely road surface. It's very reminiscent of kind of that Italian surface as well, where it rolls really smoothly and properly fast. So as you head towards the kind of Lombardy and those kind of one-day races, this is that kind of ideal preparation where you've got a really nice kind of speed in your legs, and it's, as you say, it's not heavy, so it's the race wears you out through speed rather than kind of grinding you to death.
Well, at the moment we're still dealing with this downhill run. As soon as it flattens out, that is where we get our approach. We have about another 4 kilometres of descending before suddenly we are down there in the valley. You can see where we're heading. That is where we will suddenly kick up, and that will be with 16 kilometres to go, and it's our defining climb. We're then going to scoot around perhaps, one of these mountains, and indeed finish the job at the end of the day with the same finish line beckoning. That they will have taken the bell, so they'll announce the lap. Then we have a sort of a rolling run around the mount, gradually descending before we come back and do half the climb that we'll take first time by. Gosh, it's a complicated way of explaining that something's relatively simple, but anyway, I'm trying my best.
It looks like Abrahamson's disappeared from the front there. He's kind of bouncing up and down, shaking his tyres. Maybe he's got up and managed to pick up a puncture, which is something we've not seen very much of at all, given the really nice roads that we've been on so far.
It's Jonas Gruyard. He's your man for today, as far as X are concerned. That's in front of him is Alexander Kristoff, as well as a few other notables. Ben Dixon, one of their fast men. So they're going to be emptying themselves on the flatter terrain in a short while, but we've got to deal with these before we get down there. Thankfully the road surface is dry, impeccably maintained by the looks of it, and down we come. No stress for Luke Plapp, who's finding himself at the back, having done a good deal of pacing work throughout this race. And we're nearly there. Gosh, I have this habit of whenever I see signs for falling rocks and netted mountains that we're dealing with here, sort of caged mountains, aren't they? Of reminding everyone that geological time includes today. And yesterday somebody sent me a little film. I haven't retweeted it because I'm not quite sure if anyone was hurt, but of a boulder knocking 2 cars off the road. It happens. And so those falling rocks, do take care. I remember Sean Kelly and I coming round a headland once and seeing a car with its roof stoved in, with a dirty great big boulder in the roof. Thankfully nobody in it, but it didn't do very much for the Ford Mondeo.
Well, and this time we're coming to the storm season. We unfortunately lost our daughter's car to a tree falling on it one time.
Oh my goodness.
So she came out of work and a large tree had fallen on the car.
So not only geological time, but arboreal time as well.
Yes.
Don't want to talk about fallen trees after the sycamore in the gap at Hadrian's Wall. And some errant 16-year-old with a chainsaw who's altered the landscape. Anyway, that's UK news. Let's get back to this. 23.2 kilometres from home. Chocolate. Nightmare. He's going to, if he ever gets identified, he's going to be in trouble, that kid. Anyways, let's hope for his sake that's not the case. He spends his life planting trees. Here is 23 kilometres to go. We're not quite on the flat. They're still freewheeling, but we're nearly there. And this is our race to the climb here, Pippa.
Yes, it is. So Jo Jensen still pulling on the front. Rudy Porter sitting second position, and then you've got Uno X kind of lined up waiting to pounce. I'm quite impressed that Alexander Kristoff survived this far.
Yeah.
So he's obviously in really, really nice form. But then they have the whole Uno X team there. So you imagine the other big teams will be looking at them and thinking, well, how have they managed to do that? Because we've actually lost riders.
They've actually stayed intact, which bodes very well for them. Their trouble is that others can actually get on their coattails and mug them.
Yeah, that's the problem with bike racing, that even if you've got a collective which is there's sometimes somebody individually stronger who kind of upsets what you had planned.
Exactly. Luke Plapp was on the radio there, as if to say, right, does anyone want any more drinks? Because if you don't, I'm off. Actually, they've all said no, and he's thought, well, I'm not going back to the car, I'll just come up and join you then. And there is the Australian champion just making his way back up. I thought for a moment there he was going to have a restful day, but anything but. He's a fantastic competitor, hence, of course, the reason why he's Australian champion.
It looks like he was just going to move Magnus Sheffield back up without him taking any wind, which would be the sensible thing to do. So you take your designated leader, keep him out the wind, and kind of move him up to a position where who they consider the rivals are going to be for that day, and kind of watch how they're pedaling, how tired they look.
Right, we're about 5 kilometres. This is the true flat, as you can see, with the drainage dikes here. Whenever I see something like this, I always think, do not use a campsite near still water in a place that's got reasonable temperatures, because you're likely to find your friends, the midges or the mozzies. Yes. At night you can hear that ripple of applause. It's just people slapping the backs of their neck. 20.9 kilometres from home. Are you glad I acknowledged the midge there?
Yeah, I noticed you had a reference to Scottish insects.
The midge. It's also in Iceland, I can tell you. Somebody once told me there's no mosquitoes in Iceland. I thought, oh, that'd be great. I can go to Iceland and not get bitten. He said, oh, well, there are midges. Oh, make your mind up.
The northern edition of the mosquito.
Yeah, exactly.
Small but fierce.
They've actually got one called Midge Lake, which is just worse than anything that you're going to find even in the Highlands. Anyway, Matej Mohoric, talk about Highland. This man could win today, and actually I think he possibly starts as favourite. Maybe he's not our choice, but that's because we like to spread our affections. But yes.
I think because we've been discussing the kind of GC options, we've forgotten that Matej Mohoric quite often wins on this type of stage.
Yeah, and probably will, quite frankly. He is very powerful. Yeah, a little bit uncertain potentially. Let's see how motivated he is.
So whatever happened to Jonas Abrahamsson, we didn't see he had a bike change, but he definitely went back to the car, back to the back of this group. But now he's back on the front with Jo Jensen, so back to work for him.
Well, let's see. He might actually get a little bit of leeway, Mohoric, because of the time gap that's already standing there. He might not be auto-followed by those who are gunning for the lead of this race. What do you think?
Well, the problem he's got there is that everybody will be thinking that's going to happen, and then they'll want to follow him because he's fast enough. He's got that explosiveness to make a gap. And if you actually follow him, then you may earn a couple of seconds for the GC battle. So he's kind of in that place of, right, we know he's going to up for the stage win because everybody reads the social media of the other teams, and if you can use that to your advantage as a kind of climber or still in that GC battle, then you try and do that and you watch out for him. I imagine that most of the other teams who are looking at this kind of stage win will base their tactics on what Bahrain are going to do.
I would have thought that did he back off a little bit yesterday, Mohoric?
No.
So does that suggest then that he's possibly not got the legs that we thought he had? Because yesterday it should have been a Mohoric day, really, shouldn't it?
I think his problem was that Bittner for DCM did the corners so fast that he couldn't outbrake them into them, and he wasn't willing to visit the ground again, just for that kind of stage win. So and you had Tobias Lund looked at him, in that kind of way that he obviously thought about outbreaking riders into the corners and kind of beating them up to try and win, but he just didn't. He came across other riders who were equally as committed as he was.
Well, motivation one thing, a commitment occasionally is something else. But hey, going to have to be completely committed onto this climb, and I hope for UNOX they haven't done all this work for nothing. Let us wait and see. So, I'm hearing that Parasini was second at the intermediate sprint. So, haven't got we didn't get official results, but I'm just getting an on-site note from Howden Walker, actually, that Parasini finished second, in which case he is not the leader. He is level with the leader overall. So, yeah, that come down to finishing positions then at the end of today. And we'll see what gaps open up. I think we're going to get gaps, aren't we?
Oh, yeah, we definitely get gaps. I think we've also forgotten that Tobias Lund isn't in this group. So, out on the road, Parasini is actually still race leader.
You're absolutely right. Let's see what the gaps are. So virtually speaking, 2 seconds was enough because Tobias Lund got himself into trouble today. No sight of the red jersey here. 17.8 kilometres from home, which means that we are climbing in, about 1,800 metres. Are you ready?
Well, I'm ready. I've had my drink. I've had my cup of coffee. So, I'm all caffeined up for the final.
Perfect. That's exactly what we want. And indeed, so are these guys. Mind you, some riding non-handed, which shows you that it's not exactly fully committed at the moment. And here come Kaya Roral for Aular. Maybe it's for Cepeda. Maybe it's for Barcello. I don't know. We'll only find out at the end. They've had their own success here, of course, after Yuri Leitao won on Wednesday. This is Friday. It's the big one, and they are jettisoning bidons as we speak. So, strap yourselves in. This is going to get very lively. Keplinger out of position at the moment if he wants to help Matej Mohoric. I think Mohoric will help himself. Ethan Hayter out of position, but we're used to saying that. I think Ethan out of position Hayter, it's his middle name, isn't it? But he can make amends for that rather spectacularly. Let's hope he does so.
Well, I think Luke Rowe will be far enough behind that you won't be able to see that Ethan Hayter's on the back of the group. So he won't. The road captain won't be on the radio saying where's Ethan. He probably knows already that he's on the back of this group. And you get riders like that are perfectly comfortable riding on the back and then moving up when they want to.
Ian Stannard used to do it all the time. Proper meerkat. Lovely to see him in action as well, and some of the great results he had. Right, here is Josh Tarling. I don't think he's going to TT all the way up, but stranger things have happened. Just riding in next to him is Parasini, number 86. Second in the intermediate sprint, but a virtual leader of the race at the moment. But it's all going to depend on how he climbs this one. Jetsoning personnel, that's Chris Yule Jansen for Team Jaco Alula, working for Eddie Dunbar. And Steady Eddie's here, the centre of the team sandwich out front. Zagbul Gamea acting as sweeper, just on his back wheel at the moment. But let us see how this one is delivered. Is Eddie going to get there?
You imagine that he hopes so. So Rudy Porter's taking it up. Jansen's day is over.
Yep.
They'll be thanking him for the amount of work that he's done. And if they've put Porter on the front here, they definitely have intentions to make this as hard as they can.
Well, Rudy Porter can grind into a mountain after grinds them down. Let's see. Eddie's staying with him at the moment. It's just opening a little bit of a gap. I think that's possibly rush room as well. He's leaving himself. And indeed, if anyone comes through, he's got he has that little bit of flexibility to jink out and go for it. Exchanging roles now. Rudy Porter is going to be joined by Zagbul Gamay on the front to keep this pace up. Meanwhile, back here, Luke Plapp is just out of position moderately as Keplinger just makes a move up, but a few others are getting lively now. That's Hovechka of Adrimobil wants to move up. He's climbing well, I must say, on these conditions. But at the moment, it's still Jaco that are doing more than a job. Magnus Sheffield displaying the young rider's jersey, the white jersey, there, in a good place up towards the front. I think it's Josh Tarling is pacing him at the moment.
Yeah. They've moved up just at the right time. You saw Kiplinger realised he was in the wrong place. There was riders came tumbling back and moved up while he could before it got really serious. But this injection of pace by Rudy Porter is certainly livening things up.
That's Ethan Hayter making his move up as well. I'm not quite sure still whether it's for him or for Magnus Sheffield. I believe Sheffield today. Luke Plapp could have been a winner of this one, but he's quite clearly in the service of others. Jaco still doing a fantastic job. Here is Hayter. No real worriment. Abramson is King of the Mountains man is just ahead of him here. And they're still bouncing with it just for now. They've shed personnel, UNOX, from their mobbing the front, haven't they?
They have. They've lost the lead-up man and they've lost Alexander Kristoff, so they've lost, what, four riders from that kind of front line that they had. So that kind of tells you that the pace has definitely been upped. And if you're not really a climber, you're going to disappear from this group.
Well, we're climbing now. They're just going through the Jaco team. But let's just tell you what we are dealing with, shall we? We come up to what is the finish line in Laban. In fact, we're on a slightly different approach to it. And in fact, I'm wondering whether I do think that we cross the finish line in the correct direction on our little loop today. And then we kick on up and over the top. So, get yourselves ready. This steepest part it is going to be the second time around when we get to Laban. So this is a slightly more benign approach, and then we join it, and then we hook away, we come round the mountain, and then when we do it, when it's only categorized 3 at the very last, we go up the road untested. There you go, we're heading up to the Laban Old Town. We're talking about 10-12%, and that will be for about 300 meters of real nastiness at the end. But it's how you approach, indeed, it for the first time of asking. So we will cross the finish line in Laban, but then we've got to do it all over again, and from the second time of asking, even more difficult.
Yeah, so the pace on this climb, average out about 5%, so you can see it's still the big ring, and there's a certain advantage to being on the wheel. I think that's why the group hasn't exploded completely. but I imagine there'll be a number of counter-attacks once Porter kind of swings over at the top there, unless he's feeling really, really strong and he's going to continue with this for the kind of last 10 kilometres. There'll be some kind of reaction to this. So as Girmay takes over, so that looks like it's been the plan for Porter to make it as hard as they can and thin the group down, which we can see it looks like they've lost maybe 10, 15 riders from the group.
At the finish line, it does level off just at the very, very last. I'm talking about the last sort of 20 metres or so. But the final finish is really quite gnarly. So there's only 13 kilometres to go now. However, we are nearly, we're actually on the categorised climb. And in fact, we circle around Laban, and then we, of course, in about 3K's time, we will be at the finish line. So as it stands at the moment, this is just under 6 kilometres of climbing on this approach. At the very last here, in the next couple of kilometres, it's going to kick up to about 7.5%. You can see it's already starting to pick up. Then we go over our finish, and indeed then we come round to do it again, but with a more sterling approach for the second time of asking. So get yourself ready. You see the sort of brickwork that we've got around the roundabout. We're going to be tasting some of that on the road itself a little bit later on. I think it's so that back in the old days, pack horses could get some purchase. Well, let's see who's the thoroughbred here, shall we? And who's more of a Suffolk punch? Getting very equine. Sun's coming lower behind the trees, giving us some very, very long shadows. Aular moving up on the inside. Kaya Rorel doing a good job of dedicatedly bringing him up and into position. Haile Michael it is that's guiding him just for now, just towards the gutter, the drift over to the centre of the road. This is getting gnarly.
It is, and it looks like Girmay's at the end of his he's not going to last much longer. These gears slightly too big for it. The gradient, so it looks like when he swings over, there has to be some kind of reaction to this. He's about 2 kilometres from the top. It doesn't look like he's going to continue much more like this.
So category 2, first time of asking. Category 3 on the finale, because we don't do all of this climb. So much of what you're seeing now won't be repeated. We go up to the little citadel, and then we come halfway around the hip of the mountain, and then go back on even more testy ramps back to the finish line. So here we are at 12.6 kilometres then from home, and that will ultimately be our Flamme Rouge. So get yourself ready. This is where it starts to hurt. Now we will pull away, as I mentioned, and then we will have our approach later on. But here we go then. So from the Flamme Rouge, let's see just how much of this road starts to test them as they start to grind into it right now. I think we may well have just pulled away from the route we'll be taking on the final.
Yeah, you can see a number of riders moving up. You've got Magnus Sheffield there in the white jersey and Oscar Onley on his wheel, and then you've got Alouar also paying attention. So everybody knows that something's going to happen.
Indeed. So we've just pulled away momentarily from the route that we will be taking. It's a slightly different amended route, but 500 metres we'll be back to it. It's a strange one, this. 500 metres from the end, and you can see how the road actually kicks up here. Here's the brick section I was telling you about, and this is where it really starts to grind into the hillside. 11.9 kilometres from home, but this will indeed now be our finale. Let's listen out for that bell and see who's up for it now. Springing up and over the top. Yep. And Luke Plapp's in a very good spot here, and here come DSM and Oscar Onley.
Yeah, so you've got Eddie Dunbar, Oscar Onley and Magnus Sheffield taking it up. Luke Plapp in really good position too, which is going to surprise him because he hasn't had his climbing legs on so far this race.
Let's see, that's Greyard as well. You can also see Torsten Train, Freddie Devel, not that far away either, but to what gain have indeed all the effort gone for, and here we are. It's time to go for it. Last 150 metres. Well, next time by, especially the way that this day has turned out, it's been a long one, don't forget, 191 kilometres by the time they finish, and a real grind over the top. This is 100 metres remaining when we come back in a short while, just next to the wall of the Citadel. It's Heartbreak Hill, this, isn't it?
It is, and everybody's kind of, so you've got that front line of riders all kind of looking at each other to see who's really on the limit. So far, nobody's thought about placing an attack. Maybe over the top, this is a kind of ideal time in that next kind of probably half a kilometre or so to counter-attack from the back and maybe get a small gap.
Well, some tired legs back here. I think Alexander Kristoff has actually managed to just about tag on here, which bodes well for him if he can pick up some bonuses in the next couple of days.
So here we go, Magnus Sheffield taking it up with what looks like Oscar only on his wheel.
You're absolutely right. I'm just looking a little bit further back. There is those Platt just heading backwards a little bit, but nice pickup here by Magnus Sheffield. Well, it's the time to go for it if you possibly can. Only stays with him. Who else? Epico Kern Farmer. I think that's Roger Adria who's actually making a fist of this. 11.1 kilometres to go, and this is where it gets particularly wearing. You kind of don't know where to sprint, don't know when to preserve your energies, as Eddie Dunbar just manages to get himself up. He's just in front of the Australian champion. Meanwhile, this is Alexander Kristoff. Said he was climbing well. He's wrestling to stay very much part of our thoughts deeper into this race, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, and he's got a teammate coming back from him as well, so hopefully he'll get back on. But I think, given he's been dropped this time around, he kind of knows his days are numbered for the finish, but he'll be looking to do some kind of work for the team in between.
Yep, and of course maybe helping himself into some big numbers, and maybe even a gap in the next couple of days. 2 sprint finishes and indeed a rolling finish tomorrow, which might actually suit him. Luke Plapp just adjusting the old specs to against the glare. Holding pattern for now, and Luke Plapp it is that's out front, allowing Magnus Sheffield just to ease back ever so slightly. Matti Mohoric is up here. He's got teammates around him as well. Likewise, Torsten Train and Jonas Greyard are here. Abrahamson's off the back. De Verne, the Norwegian champion's gone back for Kristoff. So they're thin on numbers, and here we go. Nice pickup. And it's Jaco with the advantage, or indeed the ambition right now. You've got to display it at some point.
Yeah, so Ricky Porter takes up again. So he's decided it's not quite hard enough for Eddie Dunbar. So it looks like they're going to pile on the pressure up until the next time up the finishing climb.
So Adria was indeed up and in the frame that last time by. Good for him. In fact, he got himself to the line first here, picking himself up some modest mountain points. Did mention the fact that he was getting busy for Equipo Kern Farmer. That's good to see. Plapp coming across the line as well. Magnus Sheffield with bigger fish to fry potentially. Let's see. And still we don't know. 9.5 kilometres from home. They can't decide.
Yeah, so there's that kind of hesitation now about who those probing attacks hurt. As I've been saying, ideal time now for some kind of attack to go and surprise everybody.
And it's now, and it's a Yolo Cometa that go up and over the top. This is nice work. And Mirko Maestri was busy earlier on today. Eric Vetter has got a lot to offer at moments such as this as well. But looking back, who's going to be tempted? This is Otruba, I think, from ATT Investments, the little guy, and he's absolutely piling into this and almost acting as a springboard for everybody else to latch onto. Let's see. It's really very much a bagatelle at the moment, and you can't tell who's going to have the legs by the end of the day. It's a proper skirmish.
That was the ideal time to try something. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like the group's going to let any riders they're not going to sneak away, but take that opportunist moment to get a bit of a gap before the final climb.
8.5 kilometres from home then, and still, well, from this angle we can't see who's mixing it at the front. Who's looked liveliest and most capable here today is Luke Plapp, but I don't think it's going to be for him today.
No, I think he's going to be in the service of Magnus Sheffield. It's quite noticeable that Oscar Only was the one from DSM who was closing all the gaps, so he obviously feels good on this climb.
Aular's just moved up. He's in a fourth wheel at the moment. He's just sitting on the shoulder or the back wheel of Luke Plapp. You can see that Magnus Sheffield in the white jersey is here. The bright yellow tightening his shoes as well. He's got his teammate doing the pacing. He's got a sweeper coming up as well, has Aular. This could be his moment for the Venezuelan champion.
It could well be, because so far on that first, the first time through the finish from the kilometre, he looked entirely comfortable, and everybody would have noticed that.
Yep. Well, let's see. Be brilliant result for him if he gets it today, and he's got 2 from Kaya Roralo, second the pace. This is great. It is for Aular. He's now allowed, of course, to sit in and let his teammates do the punishment. He's got to stay up there himself, naturally enough. And in fact, just momentarily, I can't see him, but he's not the biggest stature. There he is, in wheel 6 at the moment. He's on the back wheel of Magnus Sheffield. That's a good wheel to follow. But and he has got a kick, Aular. Let's see if he's got that at the very last. And indeed, we'll be asking ourselves if Magnus Sheffield is explosive enough to make it count at the very end. This is the sculpture park of Dubrova. Very nice, but there's an awful lot going on. Are they the sculptures? I don't know. What do they use as a model? Tuba Smarties? Quite possibly. Should we get back to the racing? 7.1 kilometres from home. I mean, I love a sculpture park just as much as anybody else, but there's a race going on. Here we are. Kaya Roralo still embedding themselves. Ineos Grenadiers have some ambition. On the blower there was Magnus Sheffield with the white jersey. He is calling for pace setting, and indeed how this is to be dictated. They're all very much aware of what the pecking order is right now, and indeed who's good, who's got the legs, and more than that, who's got the ambition today.
Yeah, you can see the speed's really up here. The road's really not wide enough to move up. Those guys who are riding on the front, they're obviously kind of leading out for their leaders in that little group who are kind of hanging around where Magnus Sheffield is. So
here we go. It's a kick-off, and it's Kaya Roralo that have gone for it. That looked like Tarling that's just trying to mark them out at the moment. No panic yet from Luke Plapp, who just rests up, leaves himself some rush room. Indeed, might well just give a magic carpet ride to Magnus Sheffield. Plapp with the Australian national jersey, the golden shoulders here, and the white jersey of Magnus Sheffield just sitting on his back wheel. Bahrain not out of this at all, with Mate Mohoric just biding his time, looks comfortable as you like. Jonas Gregarin and Torsten Train are also here, as is Aular riding the centre line. Meanwhile, Lidl Trek up here with Hjelmos, I think it is. Quinn Simmons not in sight after being busy yesterday. I think it's Hjelmos who will be their man. So back to Rabac to show you where you might have gone on holiday with 5.8 kilometres to go. I know we want to cram in the scenery, and it's absolutely beautiful, but there's a climb to be had, and there's a lot of mixing and matching going on out front. Oh, there's my hotel. The Valamar Bellevue. I did say it was coming up, but I'd still like to see the racing, even though this is a wonderful facility. Thank you very much. And here we are. Well, it's anybody's game, and it still looks very, very lively, and it's interesting to see who's coming up to join the fun here. All hands to the pump.
Yeah, so on the right hand side of the screen you've got Ethan Hayter, who's moved up with Conor Swifter. You imagine that Ineos are going to try and lead this out for Magnus Sheffield to attack at the bottom of the climb. That would be their best option at the moment.
Well, the problem is that they're running out of road, and if anyone wants to move up, it's being mob-handed just for the time being. There's going to be a very swift turn any second now. We're 4.5 kilometres out, so this is our run for home.
Yeah, it is, and it's going to get really hectic from now on. So far, you have to wonder where Mate Mohoric has been hiding. He's right in the middle of the screen. And he's following Alouar, so he knows the who's on form and who to follow.
Absolutely. Well, looks like Roger Adria has got some ambition. There he is. He just goes into wheel 2 of the line of petrol green or blue on the right-hand side of your screen. So Adria fancies it, and why not? This is kind of a generally wavering road. 3.8 kilometres to go. It'll gently bend towards the left, but not for very long before it wavers right around about the 3 kilometre mark. That will take us down towards the 3 kilometre mark. So here we go. get your road position sorted out, because there's lots of road to play with here, but there won't be after we make the turn. And that's the crucial point, because it really only comes at the Flamme Rouge. So we're going to scream down to that point.
Yeah, we are. And it looks like it's not going to be a climbers race. Eddie Dunbar and Jaco, who had done so much of the work all day, have disappeared to the back of this, and it's turning into a kind of sprint fest again by the looks of it.
Look at Parasini, number 86, who got up in the intermediate sprint. He's clearly survived the climbs in the silver there with the slightly yellowish helmet. What a man to watch. Won yesterday, didn't mind the wall, and he's kind of just got to dial his thoughts back to how he coped with that and do it again. He might well be leading this race at the end of the day. Let's see what happens to bonus seconds therein. It's a scream into town, as you can see, by Ineos Grenadiers. Working for Magnus Sheffield. He's in the white jersey at the back of that line. It looks like he's going to have a magic carpet ride in. He's basically got 4 lead-out men in front of him. Aular's just staying on his wheel. You can see, likewise, we've retrieved the situation with Freddie Deverne is up here and busy. Alexander Christoph's managed to get himself back in the frame. A remarkable athlete. And that is Parasini just using a little bit of shoulderage here and just weaving his way back to where he needs to be as well. Fantastic approach. They've done a lot of work, UNOX, here today. I'm not quite sure whether it's going to be Greyard or Train for them. I think Greyard is their best choice. So let's see. Luke Plapp with the golden shoulders makes the turn right now. 1.9. Little flick-flack, I beg your pardon, that will take us down to that 1 kilometre to go marker, but we're already climbing essentially. The road just kicking up, and this is where it gets busy.
Yeah, and we've already done this part, so everybody knows what to expect from us. So Luke Plapp on the front, and then Conor Swift, and then Ethan Hayter and Magnus Sheffield. So I think in this case you're going to have to choose Ineos versus UNOX. I imagine the Ineos trainer will be the stronger one, but so far UNOX have been able to match them quite often.
It may take somebody going solo. He's not going to have to do it yet, Aular, because he's got Barcelo, I think it is, in front of him. Had Chepeda, in fact, I think it might be Chepeda with Barcelo now being dispensed with, but Kaya Rural are doing a phenomenal job. And it is Barcelo that's going to be doing the leading, number 54 in the green there. Meanwhile, there are others here that are going to get busy. Badilati, Mr. Sourmilk is coming up to help Nico Parasini, if he possibly can. Here's Mihailovic, who would have been part of the approach for Mate Mohoric, and it may be that Mohoric does it on his own today.
So now we've got Pietrobon of Viola Cometa on the front, trying to lead out their options. Well into this final kilometre, it just gets harder and harder as soon as we hit those little cobblestones, and everybody knows that that's the moment you have to be on the front. And
here we are. Cobblestones are beckoning, and the terrain starts to kick up, and it's Luke Plapp. They'll strip out the distance to go, and this is it. It's time to show what you've got. Mate Mohoric has got an awful lot, and he's a hard man to catch in a situation like this. It might be man against an entire team or two. Still here is Parasini, and he's actually following the back wheel of UNOX. Absolutely remarkable. Trying to get into position is Oscar Onley of DSM riding the centre line. Plapp still picks it up. Mohoric is still not done just yet. Mind you, let's see, Sheffield is just slightly out of position. So's Aular. He's going to have to go the long way round, just get slightly balked. But here he is on the barriers. Can he find a way through? The Venezuelan champion. It's Sheffield that's following him. And it's going to come down to a sprint to the line. Who's got anything left in the legs? That's the big question. Onley's going to go for it, slightly screened by these spectators. Badly placed, I think. Can't be marshalled anymore, and Sheffield hits the front. Aular's on his back wheel. Sheffield's grinding it in, but it looks like it might be a lead out for Ethan Hayter. Let's wait and see as they come up over the top. Aular is there on the inside line with 200 metres to go. Here comes Mohoric trying to rejoin the party, but has he left it too late? There's 150 metres to go only right now. Sheffield still grinding it. Mohoric coming up and over the top. Adria wants to be part of the day as well. He's getting some drive here. Aular's just about run out of steam by the looks of things. Sheffield's on the back wheel of Mohoric with Adria there. Aular, I don't think can get any more out of it. And has Sheffield got anything left? Not got the explosivity just at the time. Oh, and at the line, Mohoric takes it ahead of Sheffield. Then comes Aular. And then I believe comes Ethan Hayter and indeed Roger Adria. What a finale that was. And where indeed is Parsini? Here he is now at the line. It'll all factor in as to who indeed is going to take the day and indeed take the lead of this race.
So, 200 metres to go. Mati Mohoric started fighting with his bike to try and move up, and I thought for a moment, he was just going to die a death. He was out the saddle fighting with the machine, made it up to as far as Ethan Hayter, who looked really, really comfortable, but he stayed stuck to the saddle, and it was Magnus Sheffield who was the only kind of real challenger to Mati Mohoric. I think with that second place, Magnus Sheffield is going to be in the race lead. He's going to take 6 bonus seconds, and it looked like there was enough of a gap back to Nicola Parisini that he'll inherit the race lead, and Ineos will be back in control.
Well, that was a terrific finale. Well, the cream rises to the top. That's exactly what we got. All the names we were looking for.
So there you can see that Mati Mohoric is asking Magnus Sheffield where he was. Were you asking? Were you second or third? And Magnus is going to say, "Yeah, I was second. Race lead now."
Yeah, there you are. All pals. One takes the stage, one takes the lead. It's pretty narrow, isn't it?
Yeah, really difficult finish. You could see the pace that Sheffield set. They just kind of burn through riders trying to come up and go over him, and he just, he's so strong in that type of thing that you noticed he never really got out the saddle until that last couple of 50 metres or so when Mohoric came past and he had to grab that wheel.
Well, those who have helped today, we thank them. They've animated the day. Tomorrow, Pippa, we've got a big old rolling stage with climbing straight out the back door. 189 kilometres, similar to today, destination Oshals, and it has a couple of little lumplets towards the end, but I reckon it's got Alexander Kristoff written all over it.
You'd imagine that Uno X hope so. They did a lot of work today and got mugged by Bahrain at the end, and it wasn't a secret that Mati Mohoric was up for the win today, and he managed to pull it off, but you have to say that he worked really hard for that.
Here we go. Now at this point, Aular just did not have any more drive. There goes Mohoric, and Aular tried to go with him, just could not. Sheffield could, stayed with it, and indeed a very good drive, as it turned out, from Roger Adria. Here he is. I'm not quite sure where he finished. Camera just pulls with these guys here. Adria certainly with some brave moves today, but Mati Mohoric was not to be beaten. There's a few broken hearts out there who went very strongly throughout the entire day. I'd like to see where Alexander Kristoff finally finishes by the end of everything being accounted for. I was looking for Parisini, who tried to go away from the barriers here. He is within that group, but just towards the end of it, it did start to shred at this point.
So this is the moment you can see Mati Mohoric, 200 metres to go. He's out the saddle trying to get his sprint going, but it's so difficult to get traction on this type of surface that it takes him a while to build up a head of steam, and by the time he hits the front, he's just like going that crucial couple of kilometres faster than Magnus Sheffield, and he carries it to the line. Everybody else stuck to the saddle with the effort.
Great finish. Hoarding's being beaten by the fans here. We've got a second look at everybody.
So Adria pulled his foot out there, and that's the only reason that Ethan Hayter's come over the top of him. But there's definitely going to be gaps, in this. So back to Parisini, he's going to lose some seconds, and I imagine that Magnus Sheffield takes over the race lead.
Well, I enjoyed that. Trust you did at home too. Don't forget, we've got a busy weekend, and we'll be joining you actually earlier than we have done over the last couple of days.
Yeah, so it's just shown that Parisini lost 10 seconds in that finish, so he was 10 seconds down. He was 10 seconds in front of 6 seconds in front of Magnus Sheffield.
Here we go. Eddie Zambar came home 10th. Mohoric took it ahead of Sheffield, Aular. Ethan Hayter in 4th place ahead of Adria, Dinham, Feta Otruba, and Barad with Eddie Dunbar down there in 10th place, but all the same time, save for the bonuses for the first 3 across the line. Isn't it lovely?
By my reckoning, Magnus Sheffield should be in the race lead by 6 seconds from Nicola Parasini.
And here we are.
Oh.
Magnus Sheffield leads the race by 1 second ahead of Aulard, who of course has been Mr. Bonus. Ethan Hayter is in 3rd place ahead of Parasini, the Brilliant, and Dinham. So Parasini is at that 6 second margin. Ethan Hayter at 4 seconds. Orlus Aulard, the Venezuelan champion, is having a brilliant race. He's Mr. Consistency. He's there in the sprints and also on the climbs. He might be a big threat overall. Let's wait and see. I certainly believe it. Tomorrow he'll be a feature because tomorrow is his perfect day. Quite a gnarly, knobbly sprint. See how he goes.
Your favourite for the day then?
King of the Mountains classification, worked hard for it. So did Sharan, I must say, from AT&T. He got up there a couple of times, as you know, earlier in this race. But leading by a solitary point after taking the all-category test. I imagine that Abramson will be up the road very early tomorrow to try and secure that jersey. Magnus Sheffield now leads the Young Riders classification by a margin of 8 seconds ahead of Glaivar, Onley and Barati. Goodness me, it's still all to play for this race.
It is, and just looking at that climbers classification with one point between them that starts with the first category climber out the straight away, almost from the start, a little bit of lead into it. So that'll be an interesting battle.
They will be on the rollers before they even begin the day, I am certain, because if you're battling for the King of the Mountains, you'll want to take that. Here's your gruppetto, and as predicted, Luke Rowe, everyone's gone and asked him, what time do we need to finish in order to avoid the time cut? Have they taken the bell? Have they got to go round again?
It certainly looks like it. So it's a lap of what, 10 kilometres? So probably about 15 minutes. I imagine 7 minutes down. They're going to finish 20 minutes down. So perfect calculation from Luke Rowe.
There we are. Everyone needs a Luke Rowe.
I was just thinking, they've done well, only 7 minutes down, but they've got another full lap to do, which might seem cruel, but the rules are the rules.
Yes, exactly. You've got to finish. You don't want to be offering up resting riders favours because that would be energy that they can indeed spend tomorrow.
That actually reminds me of a time the first time I got sent to the Tour of Holland, and I got dropped on the Sidewind day with 2 Italians.
Oh yeah.
And the finish was on Zolder, the motor racing circuit. And the peloton did 2 laps of Zolder, and by the time we got there, they only let us do 1 because they wanted to go home. So I think we gained about 10 minutes on our GC hopes, but we got well out of it by then.
Mohoric then taking the day ahead of Magnus Sheffield, Aulard, Hayter, Adria. Dinham was in there, Feta October, and it spins out to, what has been a great race so far, and it's still all to play for. Cairo Rural are going to be hyper motivated for Aulard, the Venezuelan champion. Magnus Sheffield, though, is your man who leads for Ineos Grenadiers by that solitary second after bonuses factored in. Ethan Hayter, 4 seconds in arrears ahead of the mighty Parasini. He could win this race. And what a surprise that would be.
So you look at this, and there's bonus seconds available. So Ethan Hayter could win this race, even though he looks like he's been struggling on every climb, and we've seen him consistently at the back. But the problem he's got is Alouar is also there, and he's been faster so far. So, could Caharura win this race?
It would be a big number for them if they did. Well, it looks like it's going to be a while before we get to... Oh no, we might actually get to hear from our day's winner in a few moments' time, Matej Mohoric. We suspected that it would be a Mohoric kind of day. My man Aulada did finish rather well. I was very pleased with that. So, and not least that he could actually win the race. Beware. Will it be decided tomorrow? Do you think we'll be hell for leather with just seconds counting on the final day? I hope so.
I can't imagine any of us are going to be that worried if a break goes with the people involved in that climbing competition right from the gun. So, you know, they've got a number of options. Ethan Hayter then becomes the chosen option compared with Elia Viviani. So it's just for the first couple of days, you know, Viviani has been their choice for the sprints, but now with Ethan Hayter kind of dangling there, you know, can take bonus seconds at the intermediate sprints as well. He could possibly win this race just through those bonuses.
If you get over the mountain tomorrow, save for the mountains competition, you then have a series of steps downhill to 3 intermediate sprints that come like rapid fire. And that could be extremely interesting because back to back to back sprints, it's almost like the golden kilometre we used to see. It could be remarkable. We'll have a whole sequence of high-paced approaches to intermediate sprints for bonus seconds and maybe the title. Well, this is your final kilometre and how we came into town. Suddenly we were climbing and it's required a good deal of timing here. Magnus Sheffield hit the front. Aular in the golden jersey here of the Venezuelan champion. Ethan Hayter was still very much in the frame. Roger Adria, had he not pulled out of his pedal, may well have got a better finish, but with 200 metres to go, Mati Mohoric comes up and over the outside, still trying to get the drive, finally found the momentum and pushed it home. But what a wrestle it was. Sheffield without that explosive kick. Aular thought he had, but ended up plonked straight back down in the saddle. Adria unfortunately unclipped at a very unfortunate moment and drifted back. You'll see it in a second in Mala centre of the road. There he is. And missed out on the podium place. And actually, Aular got up for the 4 bonus seconds, which have kept him so close to the lead of this race.
Yeah, and if Adria hadn't pulled his foot out there, then there would have been a gap next to the rope. So he kind of filled in that 10 metres. So they were really fortunate. But yeah, you have to say that Mati Mohoric fought for that really, really well.
Amazing. Well, we'll have highlights of today, of course, ahead of tomorrow's stage, and we'll be hearing from Mate Mohoric, of course, then as well. Beautiful, and another gorgeous day tomorrow for you as well. We head off towards Oschalt, climbing straight out of the back door, and then 3 intermediate sprints that come very, very quickly after the big Category 1 test. So a lot of bonus seconds, and indeed the race lead up for grabs.